This is Warbird Radio.
On this episode of Warbird Radio, we're catching up with an old friend who has some big news. He's the world expert on nose art, has one of the largest collections of B-24 nose art slides. Slides from all types of aircraft, not just B-24s, but he does have one of the largest. And of course, he worked his way into some of the greatest restorations the world has ever seen. I'm talking about Gary Velasco from Fighting Colors. Welcome, Gary. Glad to have you back on the show.
Thanks. Good to be back. Good to hear from you again.
Well, you know, we got everything fired back up, and it wasn't long. I said we got to have Gary back on to share with us what's going on.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
congratulations, by the way. Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun getting everything back up and running. You have had quite the turn of events, though, in your life with a recent diagnosis that has not stopped your efforts to continue supporting nose art and the history of Fighting Colors, but it has slowed things down just a little bit. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing the news with all of your fans today.
Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I have been recently diagnosed with ALS in June, and it was a little bit of a surprise. Given the symptoms that I've been having from February on up, and even as early as last year, I just, kind of disregarded it, shook it off, with the muscle spasms and tremors and that kind of thing, until that one day in February when I picked up my guitar and tried to play it and realized I could not form chords in my left hand anymore. And I was like, that's when I said, okay, I need to go see a doctor. And the doctor locally here referred me to a neurologist, set up an appointment at UVA here in Virginia, where, I did some tests and EMG, and it was confirmed that I did have ALS. And, again, it wasn't so much a surprise. I knew something wasn't going right inside me. So as opposed to other people being surprised and shocked and whatnot. But being, the sort of, positive thinking person that I am, I kind of power through it and, have accepted, the fact that this is going to be, struggle and a challenge, going forward. So having said that and, accepted that fact, I still accept every day as a new day and still, kind of put everything else behind me and just deal with the work at hand and the commitments that I have to customers now and try to fulfill those as best as I could, albeit painstakingly slow.
No, I get it. I mean, I get it. It took a while to do this stuff to begin with, but you combine that with the effects of the disease, and sure, it's going to take a long time. For folks who are not familiar with your work, Fighting Colors is the title of a book that you've written, and now your website and really your brand. The world expert on nose art is no, no easy earned title, but you've done that because you've painted more of it than probably anybody else alive today, including the guys that were originally doing this during the war. I think your body of work has probably even surpassed a lot of those folks. Let's dive into this because you do have a massive collection of existing artwork and of clothing, house goods, everything. It's all on your website there at fightingcolors.com. But share a little bit about what you do and how you do it.
Well, there is a process or a method to the madness here as far as replicating something historic. A lot of research goes into every project if it is a historical piece. So we leave no stone unturned when it comes to deciphering colors from black and white film, because there were two film types, and a lot of other artists and folks don't know this fact, so it renders shades of grays differently. Excuse me. So when you're looking to, again, decipher color, you have to know what you're looking at, what film type, because it could be misleading if you only have the one photograph in front of you. So after the research is done, then if it's on a normal scale down piece, which we have, our parts have been blueprinted in CAD and then punched out, so we can, rivet them, assemble them, base coat them, and then apply the artwork via a template that we draw up or have made digitally here. So we could do it again and repeat and not have to deal with the guesswork of creating the artwork once again. So every panel we've ever done, we have a template for, and there are hundreds of them here. In case we have to, again, find it, we'll just, file it and go through it and repeat it if necessary. So there's another custom piece too, where a customer would like their wife, girlfriend on that, and then we would ask for photographs in a similar pose, so we could, put the two together as best as we could to be able to fulfill the customer's desire of what they want on that particular panel with their specific title and whatnot. So those we have fun with in full reign as far as artistic, liberties to do what we want to do. But some of the historical stuff, we have that ability also, because some of the artists in World War II were not always so great in, depicting the female form. So, be out of scale, the anatomy is not correct. So we'll correct it to some degree without making it look so different that it's not recognizable from the original.
Your work goes beyond that, though, which I think is really interesting to me, and it's some of the stuff that I love about this. I mean, you've traced this idea, this art form, if you will, way back to even beyond aviation. I mean, back to the days of the Viking, and it's all there in your book. If folks haven't ever read it, it's a wonderful book. It's Fighting Colors is the name of the book, and you have one of the largest slide collections in the world that you've amassed from various collectors throughout your career, and all of that stuff is now in your archive. So when you talk about doing the research on not only some of these aircraft projects that are well known, even the lesser known ones, I mean, you actually have some of the slides that are the only things in existence from these aircraft and from these pieces of art, the original works.
That's correct. Not only slides, but the black and white photographs. As I mentioned, there were two film types. So we have over 8,000 images. Now, I'm not talking about digital images or anything, printed out. These are original documents, 80-plus-year-old photographs, much like the National Archives in D.C. There are a few people in the country that hold private collections of photographs, specifically nose art, that I'm aware of, and I'm one of them. But at some point, again, given the circumstances that I have to deal with my health issues now, I'm trying to figure out what to do with a lot of this material, as well as the artwork that's here at the shop, because there are a lot of one-offs. I mean, my shop, I'm not sure, Matt, if you've been here, there are a lot of things much like, a small museum.
Yeah, I started to say your shop looks more like a museum the last time I was there. I can only imagine now. And you're right outside of Charlottesville, Virginia. So if you're driving through, going to D.C. or whatever on the East Coast, plan a stop into Gary's shop, because it really is something to behold. And I'm guessing that with ALS, with Lou Gehrig's disease, it's going to be challenging, if not impossible, to keep doing the full-size panel work that you would do, where you would replicate a full-size version, say, of a B-17 or a B-24, something like that.
That's correct. Let alone the scaled-down versions or working on restorations. I may have one more in me. I'm not sure. It depends. The longer this goes on, the less of a chance I could, do this. So, I still think I'm good for perhaps another half year, maybe 2 a year, working with my arms and hands to be able to still paint. But I anticipated a change several years ago as far as keeping the brand alive, with working with apparel, merchandise. We have a new A2 jacket line. our own sort of a version of the classic A2 that we've made some modifications so it's a little bit more comfortable, more spiffy looking, more uniform looking, and not over baggy, look. It's just a little bit more professional, I guess, of a look. We've come out with a Hawaiian shirt line. We've revived that from when we first started with another company we worked with locally that dealt with Hawaiian tropic type shirts and wanted a specific design that was aviation related. He saw my stuff and goes, "Oh yeah, can you do something like this on a shirt?" And I said, "Sure." And we did that from 2007 to 12 until the company went out of business. And then we sort of let it go because we looked into doing it ourselves and it was just too expensive to do. But we looked into it recently again, and now with new printing costs coming down and methods with digital printing, we found a company that was able to do it in the same quality as the original shirts. So we're doing them again ourselves, and we've just launched that about 2 months ago with the Flying Tiger AVG design. We've changed and modified it to disseminate from some of the copies that are out there. We are also about to launch a second one for fall that is a B-24 design that will encompass a pinup on the back and the title Sack Time, which a lot of people are familiar with, and that's SACK, not the SAC. So it's the World War II version of the B-24 and the 308 bomb group. So that's going to be an awesome shirt. So we're excited about that.
I want to talk to you about that because that brings up a good point, and we're going to get into a little bit more of this after the break. But there have been some disputes in your career that have gone down in rather epic history, if you will. Some discussions where you just, you say, no, that's not correct. That color is not correct. Whatever it is. I mean, paint schemes have long been argued in Warbirds. We all know that. But you have some concrete proof and some evidence that is fascinating to folks who will listen. Granted, there are a lot who don't, and they're going to completely discount that. I want to get into that, and I also want to get into this idea of you reinventing yourself, because you, if anyone has been able to do it, it's you. And I want to talk about how you went from an 80s hairband rocker, you mentioned your guitar, and we're going to get into this, who opened for some of the biggest names in rock and roll back in the late 70s, early 80s, living up in New York, right outside of New York City there in Connecticut. I want to get into all of this because, Gary, your story is so fascinating. I don't want to let that go. We're talking today with Gary Velasco, a nose art expert, the world expert on nose art, as we've said for years here at Warbird Radio. We'll be right back with Gary Velasco from Fighting Colors right after this.
Lock and load. This is Warbird Radio. Tune in. Take off. Reminding you that radio engines don't leak oil. They just mark their territory. This is Warbird Radio. Tune in. Take off.
We're back, and we're talking with world nose art expert Gary Velasco. And before the break, he was telling us about his recent diagnosis with ALS and how things are changing around the shop there. But I want to rewind a little bit, Gary, because you have continuously reinvented yourself in life. You're one of those folks that is just not afraid to step out and do something completely different. And sure, you found your calling there with art and with nose art. But before that, you were an 80s hairband rocker, wearing leather pants, tight tank tops, long hair, and playing some of the meanest licks I've ever heard on a guitar, specifically a bass. You brought that up in the first part of the show, that you were having trouble actually forming chords now, which is tragic and it's sad, but you, in typical Gary Velasco style, you're just unafraid, you're fearless, you take whatever God throws at you, and you just make it work. Talk to me about that.
Well, I mean, it was a time in my life, 20s, 30s, 40s, and I had a pretty good run success, at doing what I have been doing, with playing music and guitar and various forms of bands. From
Well, and
covers
rubbing
to
shoulders
original.
with some pretty big people, too. I just want to throw that out there. We won't name names, but some guys that wore makeup, some guys that were in some pretty serious films that you've known them all. I mean, it's really cool. So I think that's pretty cool.
Well, it does, come, again, when you have some success, you get into another bracket of people that, that are successful and you're probably familiar with some of the names, if we were to name names and records out there. So, I'm honored to be a part of that. So we're lower echelon in writing the coattails of some of those guys, because, we didn't make it in the real big world. But, again, some moderate success. Maybe CD went aluminum.
Yeah.
Some people may
pot
joke
metal,
about.
right?
Yeah.
Tin, platinum and pot metal. There you go. But it was fun. I mean,
I'm proud.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the old pictures. I love it when some Warbird guy will say, "I found this picture of Gary Velasco, and you're never going to believe it." And I'm like, "Oh, try me. I bet I will believe it." There you are.
Yeah, there's
some great stuff.
There's some old photos. Yeah, the Throwback Thursday. I guess in social media here, but
good
but
stuff.
Again, that was a chapter and part of my life, and I knew I couldn't do it forever, and I wanted to get into something a little bit more lucrative that would take me to the next level, where hair didn't matter. And
there you go.
The style of music didn't matter. I didn't want to be like an old aging rock star, because some guys, they don't look right.
I think you've already captured that. The only time I've ever literally partied with rock stars was with Gary Velasco, and we had a great time at one of his friends' recording studios, who had just come out with a new song. It had been on tour with I believe the Doors and a number of other. Anyway, great guy, a lot of fun, and you're just that guy. You're that guy that you don't want to be an aging rocker, but I think you pull the look off pretty well, Gary. And it kind of goes. It goes with what you're doing now with this line of apparel, where yet again, this ALS thing has thrown a challenge in it. But you have this massive, and I mean massive, body of work to draw on now, and the ability to rebrand it. So here we are with the world appreciating this stuff again in a way that it never has, with this retro resurge that we're seeing, and you're perfectly timed in here to make a run at it. So this new line of stuff that's coming out, tell us a little bit more about it, because I think it's exciting.
Well, between the A2 leather jackets that, again, are our own brand that we have here, that we implemented last year, the Hawaiian shirt line we thought was very lucrative, and we think that that's part of the future brand of fighting colors. So we're going to run with that. We have probably half a dozen designs that are going to go into all next year. We have another new one coming out, Sack Time, as I mentioned before the break, that will be out this fall, which is going to be an awesome shirt. I'm not going to leak it out yet. Once I get samples here, then I will. When it goes into production, obviously, so we can get ahead on marketing this thing and keep the ball rolling and turning it into something much larger. But we have, we could unlimitedly, come up with many different designs with all the different various aircraft, and then nose art with this, and keeping in style with what we do as far as a theme to the look, because it is different. It doesn't have the wallpaper pattern, as I call it, repetitive over and over again that you normally would see on a Hawaiian shirt. So ours is, every panel of the shirt, when it's sewn together, makes up the final design. So it's a little bit more complex than your average Hawaiian shirt.
You wish you had paid attention better in home ec when you were learning how to sew a shirt now, because all of that's coming back.
Well, I didn't, again, it just comes with just natural, like, how to stand out. I keep trying to find ways to stand out and separate myself from all the other noise and companies out there that are delving into nose art now.
Well, I'm going to throw this out there. Shirts are great. Yeah. You need a line of hats. Everybody knows you for your hats. And I think you could give Richard Petty a run for his money if you came out with a line of Gary Velasco Warbird hats, and I'm serious. I think that would be.
Yeah,
I think you've got something there.
Yeah, you may be onto something there. I never actually thought about that, but now you've piqued my interest in this.
I'm
so
telling you.
I'll have to look into it.
Let's dive into this idea of research yet again, because the Sack Time print that you're working on. I have your panel. I have the Sack Time panel. It hangs now in my workshop, which I adore, and this is unique because a lot of folks have debated this for years. But you stand by your artwork. Talk to us about that one, because that's one of the bigger ones.
Yeah, as you mentioned before, there are people that do things that are not correct, and it's all research. The more research you do, the more of an eye you have to look for. What to look for. The better the artwork and the outcome end result will be. Now, yes, I do have some gripes with some of the restorations out there because, again, as we mentioned, I do have a huge body of photographs, and photographs don't lie. If you see something that's light and it's painted dark, there's no way that could be the color that it's being depicted on a restoration. So, and there's some beautiful restorations. I'm not knocking the work that they do. It's just the research. They could have done a little more, or they could have just made a phone call and just asked for my opinion and advice to consult on it. I would have done it for free, but and it's just, it's a little frustrating at times to see it, and I will address it and then let it go. But, and they have their reasons for doing what they do, but whatever. I still try to, keep history alive and make sure that it's correct as best as I see it, with the proof and evidence that I have to put forth, much like forensic evidence, you can't dispute once you know what you're looking at. It's right there in front of you. So
reds and blacks in particularly are very challenging.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, there's panchromatic film, there's orthochromatic film, and one will depict reds as a very dark shade of black and white, and when you're looking at it, one would easily think, oh, that's black, when in fact it's most likely red. And then, there were filters on cameras, and some cameras were better than others, and the lighting, and so you have to take all that into consideration when you're trying to figure out the colors that you're looking at.
And is there a definitive answer to some of these things without having both types of film and an image with both types of film?
Sometimes. I've done this for over 26 years now. I could look at something and pretty much, come up with a basic, palette of colors. What I'm looking at, I could tell you what it is. But in order to be 100%, I really have to look at it, do some research, see what the other, fighters or bombers had in their squadron. What were they like? What was the style like? And of course, there were several colors that were just available. If you were in the Pacific Theater, you didn't have access to a hardware store where, you had every color. A lot of artists had to mix their own paints with pigments and dyes with berries and whatever they had available. And then, thinners, they used, 100 octane fuel. So
yeah, we don't think about that part of it. Right. They weren't mailing paints over during the war so these folks could do this artwork. It was literally whatever you had available and the tools to do it with. The same thing. So, okay, so Sack Time, the debate is whether the background is blue or red.
Yellow. The lettering, I believe, it can go several
blue or
different
yellow,
ways.
that's right, yeah.
What I know that it's not blue. You have a pinup who's yawning as if she was going to bed. The airplane was based in the Pacific, where obviously every night they saw the sun setting, it was orange or yellow, depending on the time of day at the end of the day. So that in itself just, calls out that it is an evening kind of thing, right?
Not a blue moon,
You're
though.
going to bed, right?
I hear a blue moon, though. Once in a blue moon makes you wonder.
Yeah, I could see that, but it just doesn't seem to work on that airplane. And if you look at some of the other B-24s in that squadron, they used blue and orange quite a bit.
And what about the guy
background.
that says, we have the panel, Gary, we have the actual panel and it's blue? What do you say to these people?
Well, yeah, back when I addressed it several years ago for my book in 2004, there was a different director there at the CAF who it was a woman who treated all the artifacts as if it were her personal collection. So they tried to send out letters to have me cease and desist on my panels, because number one, they thought that they owned the rights to it, when in fact it's government property. It was at that point, at that time, even though they own it today. I'm basing my artwork on 80-year-old art that appeared on government property done by government personnel. Therefore, nothing at that time could be copywritten. So, I mean, it's a gray area now, but I have not, there's a new director, there's new people involved. They got rid of that person. So now, I'm working with them, selling merchandise, as far as nose art's concerned, through them and the various different wings now. So,
and you've painted quite a few of their airplanes, but I think it's interesting. Yeah. I think it's interesting that you're willing to go, and that's the point of this. You stand behind your research, and whether you agree or you disagree, you are a man who's not afraid to take a stand and stand behind what you come up with. And right or wrong, the lesson here to me is more in your character, that you're willing to stand up and believe in your own research and for what you've got. And I think that's good. So,
and you're absolutely correct.
In the words of another great Warbird guy, you've got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything, right? Mr. Aaron Tippin right there. You don't listen to probably a lot of Aaron Tippin music, being the knuckle dragon bass guitar player that you are, but I think it's great.
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, you bring Aaron Tippin. I did his SNJ.
See how I just set that up there for you, Gary? Isn't that great?
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I hear you.
Listen.
And by the way, I play guitar, not bass.
Well, that's true. You're a multifaceted guy, though, when it comes to a stringed instrument. I mean, you play anything.
I can, yeah. When you have to do things on your own and there's no one else around, you find ways to do it, and music and everything in life, in my life anyway, has been that way. Hence, me coming up with this product and doing it on a commercial level, and being as successful as I am, thus far, doing what I do. So again, reinventing myself, because of the situation now, health-wise, I have to find other ways to do this. So having other companies and selling to them and having the wide body of nose art that could be applied to other companies' products, whether they be licensed out or we work on some kind of deal on the back end with royalties, it's all going to be different, but, I'm now being approached by other companies in doing such things like this, like tumblers. There's an aviation gift company now that wants to utilize a lot of my art on their products. So I'm starting to see more companies like this being approached and say, hey, can we use your art? We love it. We want to put it on, our lighters, our, coasters and mouse pads or whatever. There's a whole wide range of things that we could do stuff with. So, but again, being original and to stand out, because there is a lot of stuff out there already. So I don't want to be just another person putting a product out with nose art. It has to, when you look at it, you say, I got to have that. That's where I'm after. And it's not always easy trying to find products, and not everything always works. So, but you got to keep doing it. You got to keep pressing. And that's what, I thrive on. That's what gets me up every day. I love doing what I do. I love coming into work. And this ALS thing, even though at some point it'll kick my butt, I'm just going to do it until I can't anymore. It's just, and even when, if I'm in a wheelchair, I'm going to dictate to somebody else that's going to be working for me and tell them what to do, to keep the brand going. And hopefully, one of my kids will take over. and just keep moving. But in the meantime, I do have a shop here. A lot of stuff, where I say everything is now for sale. I do have some stuff on eBay, Marketplace, and whatnot, and I'm going to be putting a lot more things up that, people have wondered, were you willing to sell that? And at one point I was like, no way, but now, I'm not going to have a whole lot of use for it. Some stuff will be donated or put on, permanent loan at some museums, and a lot of stuff will be sold off. So if anybody has an interest in what I do, try to put a list together. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, there you go. We'll
it's more like, okay, what do you want?
Right.
I have a lot of stuff.
Ejection seats, clocks, panels, whatever.
Tons of skin from aircraft, right. F-8 stuff, T-33, you name it. I got all kinds of wild
God
stuff.
Bless you, Gary, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the next chapter holds. Always a pleasure to have you on, sir, and I can't thank you enough for supporting Warbird Radio all these years and for being just such a great friend. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming.
Well, I'm looking still to do as many shows as possible. There's maybe one more Oshkosh in me to do next year. Sun and Fun, perhaps, Reading, the Mid-Atlantic Air Museum, some of the big ones on the East Coast, and, of course, Oshkosh. So
there you go.
I'm going to do what I can do, and I hope to see a lot of you folks out there, especially you, Mac, because it's always fun hanging with you, listening to the stories.
Well,
you have quite a lucrative life yourself, so don't sell yourself short. Maybe somebody ought to do an interview on you.
Well, we'll see. All right, Gary. Great hearing your voice. It's Gary Velasco from fightingcolors.com. Always a pleasure, Gary. Talk to you real soon.
Thank you. Yeah, everybody.
Well, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure and follow along with Warbird Radio on Facebook, on Instagram, and, of course, via email. Sign up for our email newsletter and never miss an episode. Until next time, so long for now, everyone.